It's time for the news.
Another UFO sighting has taken place.
The leather's made out of cardboard.
The number you have dialed is in an alternate dimension.
Welcome back to Weird Week. I'm your host, Jack DeMont, here with my co-host, Daniel Kim. We're going to change up the format on you guys a little bit this week. We're going to try to produce shorter episodes, but more episodes. So bear with us while we try to get through this new format. It's a little different for us as well. And we're going to start to just like kick things off right away. Just jump into articles and kind of fly through them because we have a lot to get through in a shorter amount of time than normal. So welcome back, Daniel Kim. Happy Monday.
Monday fun day.
Monday fun day. You had a good weekend?
Yeah.
Good,
Swell
good.
weekend.
Swell, not too shabby. That's my favorite. Not too shabby. One time while I was working at Starbucks, I would greet the customers in the morning. Whenever they would ask me how I'm doing, I would say not too shabby. And then I had an older gentleman tell me, "Do you know what that means?" After I had said it once. And I said, "No, because I don't know what not too shabby means. I've heard it in film and television and things like that, but I don't know what that means."
He was gonna get the whole history of not too shabby with you.
Yeah. He wanted to discuss that with me. He got into it and he, basically made me pull out my dictionary, look it up. And it was funny because he said, he said, like, "You're not wrong. You're probably right with the way that you said it. Just make sure you know what you're saying before you say it." And that stuck with me. So I looked it up. Not too shabby. Shabby means like worn out over time. So you're just not worn out over time. But I was right, but not necessarily.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump right into things. The entertainment industry has lost $10 billion in one day following writers' strike. I believe the $10
That is
billion
a lot to lose in one day.
Right. I
My
believe the $10
goodness.
billion loss is more of like a projected loss than an actual loss. But from what I can tell, those projections are not going to be too far off base at the least. You know what I mean? They're definitely going to lose tons of money, so much freaking money from this writer's strike. Here, you know what? I want to switch up this background on us, Daniel Kim, so we can see our logo. I'm going to do this live while we're recording. Confetti, looking very retro. 90s.
Yay! We lost $10 billion. $10 billion. Is that what that was for?
Week. $10 billion. I love the entertainment industry, and I think that writers deserve better. We haven't had the greatest writing over the history of time, but it's also not all bad. There's also a lot of really good writing that goes on out there, and it's unfortunate that we're having this incident happen again. There was a writer's strike that happened in the early 2000s, I want to say, early to mid 2000s, that really screwed the entertainment industry at one point in time. They lost not just lots of money, but lots of shows ended up just like actually getting canceled, or their next season got postponed so far out that they almost lost their fan base, a bunch of these shows, and then they weren't able to renew that show for another season because that fan base never came back to rewatch the new season after the writer's strike. So we're hoping, as a society, that the writer's strike doesn't hinder our entertainment from continuing to be produced. The problem I find is that I don't think the entertainment industry, the people that need to pay the writers, I don't think they're going to really like make much of an adjustment or compromise because there's so much content out there now. There's just so much content out there that they could probably try to find ways to make their money elsewhere or to find more writers in more creative ways. It's just I don't know that this is going to be the same as it was the last time the writers stroked.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because like I remember like there was a writer strike that happened, I believe, in the early 2000s or 2000-ish era, and there was a show I really liked called Heroes, and then that happened. That season ended right when the writer strike was happening, and we didn't get to see much from that show afterwards. I don't know. I know they tried to restart it again, but it didn't capture the same magic, and that was probably one of my favorite shows after before the writer strike.
Yeah. No, same happened to me with one of my favorite shows called Pushing Daisies. Have you ever seen Pushing Daisies?
Yeah, I've seen. I think I caught a few episodes of it.
That one was really good, and it wasn't what was unfortunate about Pushing Daisies as opposed. And I know Heroes went through the same thing. I remember specifically Heroes being one of the biggest shows at the time to really fall victim to that writer strike. Uh, the premise for Pushing Daisies is great. I just want to run it by people really quick that are listening. It's so that they can go and watch the 2 seasons that are out. The first and what I was getting into is like why it kind of sucked for Pushing Daisies a little more, I think, than Heroes was that Heroes had like a good amount of seasons out already.
Hmm.
So when you go back and you rewatch, you actually have like some meat to get through. Pushing Daisies, unfortunately, the writer strike happened right after the first season. So when they tried to come back eventually, it was only their second season they were trying to come back with, and it was like so much later that even I was like somebody that couldn't get back into the show so much later, even though I really, really loved the premise from the jump.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was a show that was kind of morbid, but also had like lots of bright colors, which was
Hmm.
really like different for a show that has that kind of surrounds death as a premise. But the main character as a child learns he has the ability to revive things, animals and beings,
Yeah,
and he by touching them after they die. But the
yeah.
problem is they only stay alive as long as he doesn't touch them again. If he touches them again, then they die. And then they die permanently. So he has one shot at resurrecting people. And then he
Hmm.
goes into being like a detective and an investigator type thing with his friend. So it's interesting because like the show is a true crime, but it's like comedy, bright colors, there's death, he's reanimating dead people and asking them how they died, and then they're giving him their side of the story, but somehow there's always something that makes it so that he touches that person again before they could give him all the information, and then they're dead forever and he can't get it all. It's a really good show. I really go look it up. I think it was premiered and aired on ABC, so
Yeah,
it's probably on like Hulu or something like that. Go find
yeah,
Pushing Daisies. It's a
yeah,
great show. I really liked it.
yeah. And also, I think like this is like when reality TV kind of took off too. I think it's after the writer strike. I think reality TV it doesn't need as much writing. I know like the producers do something to push the events forward on reality TV, but I think this is like when I think reality TV. I think after this, I think Jersey Shore, one of all those reality shows were like really took off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Because they didn't have to deal with the writing. That's
yeah,
really
which
interesting.
is I don't know. I think there's a big playing field. I think the writers have a right to demand a little bit more money, given the fact if they like help write for a show that would produce the mass popularity and like earned a ton of money. I think they deserve a cut of it. I mean, that's not
Right.
far fetched to for them to demand that, but it's
No.
definitely also I hope like this writer strike doesn't give birth to something where they now the writers are in a bind where they're not as wanted anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's unfortunate because it's like what I was saying earlier is just like there's so much content and stuff that's coming out right now. It almost feels like the writers are definitely being like just pushed around and treated unfairly they because they're just seen as disposable. It's really unfortunate. Like these big companies aren't seeing their worth. They're and they're overproducing content. They're producing too much content to the point that people are like, this show's trash, that show's trash, this movie's trash, and whatnot, because writers are being overworked. They're producing too much material, and their brains can't do all this writing feasibly. So it's almost like this might help our content going forward, because maybe the less writers the better, because maybe it'll actually be stronger content. We've been really getting some lousy entertainment for the past few years, if you ask me.
Yeah, but hopefully everything works out, and maybe this might give some international writers some attention, because
Right.
international cinema has been pretty, as far in the last few years, has been pretty popping.
Yeah. Moving on, because we got to move along. The entertainment industry clearly has the potential to lose tons of money from this. Well, so does the British. Well, not from this specific incident, but the British military has a chance to lose tons of money by somebody accidentally leaving a submarine guide in a toilet. in a restroom, not toilet specifically, in a bathroom on the floor.
We found all those in the toilets, right? Submarine plans, blueprints for a missile.
So from reading into it, a guy who is training to be a part of the British forces has a submarine manual, and he was studying while he was at a pub and left that manual in the restroom.
Yeah.
He's lucky that it was picked up by just some random civilian that was not going to try to use this information for any kind of nefarious things. But at the same time, it's funny because the government seems like they are kind of just taking it very lackadaisical. They don't really care almost. They're saying, yeah, it looks like the guy was studying. We wish he didn't study in public with the manual and then just leave it somewhere. We do wish our people would be better about that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like they're really too worried about it, because I think the bigger thing is that it's just submarine plans that many countries would already have their own form of. They have some most armed militaries around the world have their own submarines by now, so a lot of the things that they would find in that manual wouldn't be new information. It would just be very specific to the British military's submarines.
Yeah. And it also brings up the point where, like, kind of who's handling this information. It's like they should be liable, and kind of if they handle it misproperly handle these classified information, they should be responsible for that. To find it in a toilet, granted, if it was something else that really could be a threat to public, that could be devastating. So I don't know, it kind of like brings some food for thought, like who's handling this and how they're handling it.
Yeah. And you had brought up earlier before the podcast with me about how we had just spoken on the leaker, the government leaker from the US, and how he got in tons of trouble for his leaks. And you have to wonder, like, is leaking some information from a PowerPoint as bad or worse than somebody releasing plans for an entire submarine? You think maybe the submarine thing might be worse, but it's also different military governments that are handling it, and how they handle their punishments towards people doing that kind of stuff and whatnot. The UK, Britain, they love their beer and their pubs, and they probably forgive any guy who's hanging out at the pub reading up on their manual. They're probably just fine about it, and they're not going to reprimand him like we would, I don't think.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. The British nuclear submarine, they found it in a pub, in the toilet. Speaking of restrooms, a Newberry High School threatens to remove toilet paper from the restrooms. Now, this was more of like an empty threat as far as I can get into, but it looks like, the principal wants to, or the assistant principal wants to let the kids know they need to stop flushing down entire rolls of toilet paper. It's probably just costing the school district tons of money providing toilet paper roll after toilet paper roll. They said that the students would have to come up to the front desk in order to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think two things could happen from this outcome. Either the school's budget is going to be really pristine. There's no overspending on outrageous like restroom toiletry, or these students are going to have the smelliest asses of all the schools in their district.
I wonder if, well, yeah. So it's not really going to happen. These kids aren't going to have the smelliest asses, but they just need to learn their lesson, man. They just need to stop flushing. You have to just be cool kids. Just be respectful kids.
If you've ever been in a public restroom, my God, you need to freaking use a whole toilet paper to wipe down those toilets, because my God, they pee and poo all over the place. And it's just like, how do you not use as much paper as you do at your house? Because your house is generally going to be clean and you feel comfortable sitting down on the toilet at your own house. But in a public restroom where people are peeing all over, I mean, I can say this specifically for the men's restroom or the boys' restroom. It is a mess.
No, yeah, it's a good point you bring up. And like also toilet paper in public restrooms, specifically like schools and whatnot, they have like the thinnest toilet paper on the face of the earth. It's not just one ply, it's half a ply. It's so thin.
It's rough ply too. It's like
it's
like
it's rough. It's causing tears. And yeah, you have to triple, quadruple layer those TPs in order to make it comfortable down there. So I can understand, especially, but this is a high school. This isn't, I was thinking, maybe elementary school kids being a little more inappropriate about it, but these are also high schoolers. You would think that they would maybe be a little more responsible, but also high schoolers are just so angsty nowadays, right?
So they're all going to invest in bidets now at school.
Yeah. All right. While we're on the topic of schools, we have a mom here who pulled her son out of a school after being snack shamed for sending him to school with Pringles. He's 3 years old. The school basically sent a photo back to the mom with an empty Pringles can saying something like, we want to try to instill healthier food options with our kids. And she felt it was passive aggressive and unnecessary. She still sent plenty of other healthy snacks and she doesn't view Pringles as being like too unhealthy. She does say stuff like she thinks, Cheetos are unhealthy. And I think like there's maybe a little bit of disconnect there where it's like, okay, well, you can't say you think Cheetos are unhealthy, but not Pringles. Pringles are still a snack potato chip that if you think Cheetos are unhealthy, you should think Pringles are unhealthy just as well. They don't look like much healthier of an option, but I guess she thinks, it's a plainer chip or something, so maybe it's healthier.
I don't know about the whole healthy thing. I mean, I think it's more so it's like, is it the school's place to just more so, I don't know, I hate to use this word, but like snack shame a kid because like, I don't know, like sweet potato chips are healthier chips are more expensive. Like healthier things in general are more expensive, like organic, like those things are a lot more expensive than regular snacks. Like even with like markets in general, I think like it's healthy options tend to be the more expensive, and that she have to now shell out more more money for snacks just because you feel uncomfortable that this is healthy or unhealthy. I think that's the real debate here, as opposed to like us determining whether like flaming hot or Takis are more healthier. I don't think that's the school's place to put, unless like the kid's not bringing cocaine into with his lunchbox. He's just bringing like a small snack size of Pringles. Like, why is the school
Right.
tripping out about shit like this? It just doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't seem to make much sense. And basically I agree in the sense that the school overstepped their bounds a little bit. They need to focus a little less on each individual kid's snacks that they're bringing from home and worry more about what they're providing to the children and things like that. Are they giving the children that have unhealthy snacks an option to have something else if that's all the parents can provide with things like that? You know, and to send it in kind of like a snarky little comment, it feels very childish. It feels very much like the school heads or the teacher or whoever was the person that sent it is acting just like the children they're watching over, and being very, very childish in that. And then so then she says, my son's been at the school for quite some time now, and we had registered him for the summer program for 3 days a week. Later, we were told by the school, we no longer have a part-time spot for your son this summer. And so she immediately pulled him out of the regular school. She just pulled him out. She said they revoked, the summer program from us. And she pulled him out.
It was
And
one
I
of those
find
cases of like, I didn't break up with you.
you
Like, you didn't break up with me. I broke up with you.
Yeah, she saw the text. She saw the "we need to talk" text and said, "Oh, I'm breaking up with you first." But I do find it funny that she says, like, my son's been at the school for quite some time. He's 3 years old. Like, how long has your son been at the school?
Maybe she flunked out a few years and she had the kid there.
He's 3 years old. Like, even if you put him in at 2, that's 1 year. And like, what was he learning at 2? Like, I'm just so confused. But I do understand her wanting to pull the kid out, especially after they kind of like revoked her summer program. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Moving on, because we gotta. Speaking of the kids and being disrespected, there's a lot of 10-year-old kids being overworked at some McDonald's out in Louisville. A few franchisees have quite a few McDonald's out in the Kentucky area, and they've been employing like 305 children between the ages of like 10 to 15 or 16.
Under 16, yeah.
Yeah. To work for them, and some of them are working for no pay. I don't know how the laws work in Kentucky for child labor and things like that. Like, I don't know if they're allowed to get 4 hours out of a 10-year-old as volunteer or something like that. That's probably what's happening. But they're overextending that. They're pushing it further than it's supposed to. There's a limit on how long you're supposed to let these kids work, because they're definitely under the age of working age. And not only are they like working extended hours for free, they're working until like 2 or 3 a.m. And that's just insane for like a 10-year-old. And so most of these 305 kids are not 10-year-olds. Most of them are 14 to 15. But there are 2 10-year-olds on documented as having to stay and work for free till 2 a.m. And it's just absurd. It brings up a lot of questions about child labor and the way that these things are being implemented. But at the end of the day, once it was found out that these kids were working as late as what they were and as long as they were for no pay, people are definitely looking into it and trying to get these franchisees in big trouble for letting it happen.
Yeah, because I know McDonald's is like a big like you own a franchise, so you own like it's a McDonald's operate under the umbrella of McDonald's, but it's kind of like another private company that operates the locations in the specific area.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I know that. I think like a lot of times they were saying like something about like excuse me, they were saying like they're being, I think they're like if you're under 16, you're allowed a certain amount of time a week to work, and they're working over that time.
Right.
And I think also the 2 10-year-olds were actually found to be their children of a worker that was there that was working late. So I think they were just helping out their
Right. It
mom
makes
with the like
sense
the
that
fryer, and then that's why technically you're not still supposed to do that. They're not employed, so like that's a big liability for that company if like let's God forbid, because they were working the fryer, if
right.
like a 10-year-old doesn't have the strength of a grown adult, so like if they lift something wrong and like oil burns them, that's a gigantic liability both for the mother and the child, and the company has to kind of shoulder that blame. So I
Hmm.
mean that like, but still, given the fact that they employed a lot of the 14 15-year-olds and overworked them, it just shows like our labor laws are kind of a little out of whack, and also like
They're
what
just not
state we're
regulating it essentially, and
yeah, and then we kind of boast about like us being the strongest economy, the best country in the world, and we're kind of having the same labor laws and operations as a country
as like
that's
third
less
world
affluent.
countries. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that's like,
yeah.
it just kind of makes you wonder like what's really going on here?
Right. It's it's unfortunate, and I hope that there's enough pushback to give these kids some money, some
Mhm.
compensation,
Mhm.
and to have them actually like have their hours regulated, because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
absurd.
Yeah. And it's hard too because I don't know each individual worker that worked there, that the fact that at the age of 14 and 15 that they can't be just a simple kid and just enjoy kids shit, like because you have like your 90% of your life is you have to deal with adult shit. But like you have that small percentage of your life where you just can be carefree like a child. And I don't know, like the fact that like I know a lot of families struggle where they do have to have extra income come in to just make ends meet. And
Right.
I don't know, it's just a tricky situation right now. I mean, it's sad that we can't figure out a solution for both, where the family doesn't need to send out their 14 15-year-old child to help out with expenses, and we can't have proper laws in place where companies are liable for employing these kids and working them overtime just because you have a dinner rush that was unexpected.
Right. Right. Speaking of things that are supposed to be age restricted, such as working, porn is supposed to be age restricted. And Utah lawmakers believe Pornhub and other porn companies don't do a good enough job at regulating the people that are coming in to their site by saying um it's basically the verification process is just by clicking a button that says I am 18, and they're saying that's not a good enough verification process, and
Hmm.
they want these porn companies to like check IDs and things like
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
And now Pornhub is blocking all of Utah users from being able to access their sites. And then they're leaving a message with a famous porn star. You can go and look it up yourself, where she says, "Tell your lawmakers in Utah to change legislation and you guys can get your porn back." But
Yeah.
basically, it's unsafe for us to try to check your IDs and hold on to your driver's licenses and driver's license information. It's
Yeah.
almost more insecure or more, of a security breach than anything for these kinds of companies to hold that information. And I
Yeah.
think Pornhub makes a great point, but I think it's also a really good way for them to try to get out of doing that. Like, I think it's a whole nother operation and a whole
Hmm.
nother, like, really, really hard thing for the companies to have to do to try to get whatever verifications they have to do. And like, to get people's driver's licenses and hold on to that information. I think they don't want to be held accountable for that kind of stuff and would much rather it just be put on them and say, we can't do this. It's unsafe. But I think at the end of the day, it's also something that like they just don't want to mess with on their business side of things because they just don't have a big department for that.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks because I mean I know Utah had that whole thing against porn where they thought it was a epidemic against like morality, and I know that's Utah's a big Mormon country, and shout out to the Mormons, but you know it's hard. It's I mean I saw my first porno at my friend's house via DVD, and I think I did a lot of porn watching when I was under 18. I mean you're leaving a lot to these kids being like answer these things honestly, and it's like, are you over 18? It's like, yeah, sure I am, and I clicked it, and then I think there was also this option you have to put in your date of birth, and I always chose calculated where it makes me over 18 so I can watch a lot of the pornographic videos and images. So it's just kind of, I know, and you're leaving it a lot to the, and then I mean, is it really Pornhub's fault to say like they put the proper measures in place saying, hey, you can't watch this unless you're 18? And it's like, if the kid's gonna say yes, I mean, whose fault is it? It's like the whole TikTok thing too.
Yeah.
Like it's just like when you put that verification, say, hey, you're over 13, right? And then they say yes. It's just like, what is TikTok supposed to do? Like, you know, people value their privacy. They can't tap into your phone and verify everything. So it's just like now you hit that you're caught between a rock and a hard place now. It's just like, what's TikTok supposed to do? It's like we don't allow over 13-year-olds to view certain videos, but yet some of these kids are saying yes, and just like, so who's really at fault here?
Right. I think, you know, the lawmakers are trying to say that they've just made it too easy for kids to just get past, you know, by clicking that button. But really, like, how are you supposed to regulate that kind of a thing without obtaining people's really like some of their most not vital information, but secure information that they're supposed to have?
Yeah.
So I can see kind of both sides of the argument, but I think at the end of the day, Pornhub wins this one. Lastly, we're going to jump into a couple more things that are going on, shady things that need to be regulated and looked into. So the states of New York and California, obviously two of the most prominent states in the United States, are investigating the NFL for workplace discrimination. Basically, too many stories of sexual harassment and racial discrimination during hiring processes have caused attorney generals of the two states to issue investigations. The NFL is cooperating with the investigation. However, they do deny the allegations of sexual harassment and racial discrimination.
The NFL, all hail the almighty NFL. They can do no wrong.
Right. Yeah. No, we knew, and we know. I mean, after the Commanders owner lost his team, the reasons he lost the team was like all Me Too movement, was all a bunch of allegations of sexual harassment, racial discrimination, and stuff like that actually eventually made him have to sell the team. And it's like, if that's not evidence enough, you know, I mean, the guy is selling his $1 billion team. He wanted to be a football owner. That's all he wanted in his life. And he's selling his team because he knows he done wrong. And I'm not surprised whatsoever to see that these investigations are going down. And I wouldn't be surprised to find that they're going to be finding a lot of crazy stuff, you know, lots of stuff to get these guys with.
Yep. I mean, it's tough. I mean, the investigation is going on, so we'll see what happens after it. I can't say I'm not shocked, or
yeah, no,
I
that's
can't
exactly,
say I'm
not surprised.
I mean, why can't football just be football? At the end of
Football
the day,
is family. follows. Okay, it was a good one. We're gonna get out of here because this episode is pushing its limits. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Keep on following, liking, subscribe. Catch every episode on YouTube or anywhere that you get your podcasts, and we'll hit you back this Wednesday. See you soon. Peace.